come on in, you can grab a spot, but then you should stand up. We're gonna sing a couple songs together. The first song we're gonna do is a new song. You may know it. I mean, we didn't write it, so you've maybe heard it. But it is a new song to our church, and we've got some helpers up here that can do some actions. This is our theme song for FBS this week. So we're gonna sing this one every night. You're gonna get real familiar with it. And as you watch the actions here, we'd love it if you would participate in the actions too. So this song is called True North for our Camp True North. Here we go.
All right. Oh, you are my true north. Oh, you are my true north. I will follow you into the dark, dark, dark. I will follow you with all my heart, heart, heart. 2, 3, 4. I will not let the darkness steal the joy within my soul. I will not let my circumstance become my compass, no. I will not let the fears of life and sorrows of this world dictate to me how I should feel, for you are my true north. Oh, you are my true north. Oh, you are my true north. Oh, oh, of shame. I will not walk beneath the clouds that taunt me and condemn, for I will stand on solid ground, the shadow of your love. Forgive and change, a heart renamed, for you are my true north. Oh, you are my true north. Oh, the dark, 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 you are my true north. I will follow you with all my heart, 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 you are my true north. I will follow you into the dark, 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 you are my true north. I will follow you with all my heart, 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 you are my true north.
Awesome. Thank you to our action helpers. We love it. You can still stand with us while we sing our last song. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is lights up the path for us that we can see in the dark because of you, Jesus. Praise your name, Father. Amen.
Hi, guys. For those who don't know me, I'm Amanda. Thank you all for coming. This is a really great turnout. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I'm going to make just a couple quick announcements, and then what's going to happen after I talk about like two things is I'm going to split the kids into their groups, and we're going based on age. So the preschool and kindergartners will be together in a group. The first and second graders will be together in a group. Third and fourth graders, and then fifth and sixth graders, and then adults get to stay up here for some fabulous teaching from the one and only Tory. I'm Tory Bjorklund. Okay, so first up, my first announcement is mostly for the kids. These decorations are super cool. The decor team did a really great job coming up with some awesome ideas. But yes, give them a round of applause. But they are a little bit fragile. So we're asking kids as much as possible, and grown-ups, to try not to touch them, okay? Because they could rip or break, or like the big wooden ones could crash. So just do your best not to touch them. If it's an accident, we're totally forgiving, but just try not to touch. Secondly, we're actually just a tiny bit ahead of schedule, which is really good when it comes to things like crafts and games that might go long. So we are probably going to add about 5 minutes to our station's group leaders because we're a little bit ahead of schedule. So crafts, you will have 20 minutes. Games, you'll have 20 minutes. Just since we have extra time, okay? Lastly, when we're all said and done at 8 o'clock, we're going to come back up here with the kids and stay up here for our dismissal. So unless you have to leave early, in which case you're welcome to grab your kids and go. But otherwise, we'll come back up here for announcements about tomorrow and a little debrief. Got it? Does anybody have any questions? Joel? Going into. So going into 5th grade, going into 3rd grade, going into 1st grade. That's how we'll split the groups up. And I think I have almost everybody on my list too, so I'll do my best to call out names, okay? Yes?
How about 9th grade?
9th grade, are you helping with drama? So that's where you're going, man. If you are a teenager and you are not helping, you are welcome to go with a group as a leader or stay up here and hang out with the adults and get some great teaching time, okay? So we have a spot for everyone. I also do have a list of helpers, so you might be on my list. Okay, without further ado, the preschool through kindergartners are going to be led by Obi and Mariah. Can I get you guys to come up here? Oh, you can just stand where you are. Actually, just kidding. Stand in the back. And okay, if you are going into preschool or kindergarten, so if you are Ingrid, Edie, Ren, Judah, Libby, Will, Linux, am I saying that correctly? I don't see them, so maybe they're not here right now. Miles, Lainey, Elliot, Hattie, Eli, any other preschool, so that would be ages 3 to 5. Is Addie going into kindergarten? Addie can go with them. Yep. And you are going to go to Rita's classroom first. So Obi and Mariah are going to lead the way to Rita's classroom. Obi and Mariah, her classroom is in the new building. Just making sure you know, okay? All right, up next, I have first and second graders who are gonna be led by Emma, Calliope, and Josiah. If you guys wanna stand up and go to the back. If you are a first or second grader, on my list, I have Faith, Otto, Zeke, Brady, Forrest, Elena, Malachi, Elijah, Millie, Luca, she must not be here, Vivian, Stella, they're not here, sorry, Zoe, and Avon and Arlo. Did I miss anybody that's going to be a first or second grader? Okay, good. All right. You guys, Emma, do you remember where I said you guys are starting? What? You guys are starting with crafts. So you guys are going to go over to the gym with Chelsea and Bethany. Sorry, I have to find my list here quick because I gave them all away. Okay, up next, third and fourth graders, woo-hoo! All right, you are gonna be led by Abby, Nellie, and Amelia. Woo-hoo! All right, so I have Cora, Erica, Tor, Silas, Fiona, Evelyn, Audrey, Canyon, Simeon, Posey, and Joseph, and Elijah. Did I miss anybody? Okay. And then last, but definitely not least, funnest group. I have fifth and sixth graders. So you're going to be led by Zeke and Liam and Elam. You guys can all stand in the back. I think if you're a fifth and sixth grader, you know you are, but I've got Joanna, Joel, Olive, Regan, Tessa, Annika, Ezra, Titus number 2, and Nathan, and I think that's everyone. And then if you're an adult, you get to stay up here. Woohoo! Have fun and good luck.
All right. I asked Tory if he said if he needed an introduction, and he said he didn't care. So I'm going to do it my best not to care. But Tory is hard to ignore. He's got that kind of talent, and I appreciate him, and frankly admire him. And maybe I want to be like him when I grow up. So Tory Bjorklund, why don't you come up here and share with us what God has been sharing with you?
Thank you, Tom. I've admired Tom for a long time. So it's mutual admiration, I guess. Who can I get to volunteer to pass some of these out? Thank you. I'm going to pass those out because I pretty much guarantee I won't get all the way through my outline tonight because I only have about an hour and a half. But I'm going to let those, whoever wants to get one, you can get one. If you're like me and you don't, like if I try to take notes, I miss what's being said. So you don't have to take notes, but some people like to take notes And if you got a pen, you can take notes on there. But otherwise, you take this home, you'll have perfect notes, because I'm sure I'll follow that perfectly, right? I'm going to say a quick prayer here and just see if I can invoke God's blessing on what we're doing here. And God, I just thank you that we can come before you and ask what is on our heart. And my heart tonight is that I want you to speak. I want you to have an impact on the hearts of the people here. And just use me as an instrument as you see fit. And I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. I'm going to check this thing out, see if it works. It would if I turn it on, maybe. And it does. Look at this. Okay, we are talking about truth all week long. So, and I'm going to try something new. I've never done this before. People that coach speakers tell you to do this. And so I decided after all these years, I'm going to break down and follow the advice of the people that know. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you first what I'm going to tell you, okay? So here's what I want to tell you. Now, after I say this, the reason I've never done this is I have this fear that people are just going to say, okay, we got it, and get up and walk out. So just hang with me, okay? So God desires all people to be saved. We all know that. Do you know what comes after that? And come to the knowledge of the truth. That's 1 Timothy 2:4. Paul said that. I knew it would happen. So I'm going to tell you what I believe truth to be. And then I'm going to tell you how God has revealed truth to us. And then I'm going to talk about the connection between truth and faith. Okay? So that's what I'm going to tell you today. So let's start with what is truth. Okay, now sometimes we get a little sloppy in our culture with using words and not really having a definition. So I want us to have a good, solid definition as we talk all week about truth. And this will probably come up a few times throughout the week, just as a reminder, because I know some of you will need that. So if we go to a dictionary, I just happened to pick Merriam-Webster because that was the first one that came up in Google when I was looking for the definition of truth. And one of the definitions there, you know how words have multiple definitions listed, right? So here's one of the definitions that are listed there. The body of real things, events, and facts. Okay, real things, events, and facts. Now, body means, like the grouping, it's not, like you. But everything that's real, that's a real event or a real thing or a fact. So here's a second one. In the same dictionary, a transcendent, fundamental, or spiritual reality. Now, in my book, fundamental and spiritual is just repeating itself, but a fundamental or spiritual reality. And then the last one is the property as of a statement of being in accord with fact or reality. So I'm just going to dumb that down for myself here. Truth is reality. And it's a claim. If you speak something, if it corresponds to reality, that's the truth. If it doesn't correspond to reality, that's not the truth. And so, when you speak the truth, you are representing something as it actually is, according to the reality of the thing, all right? Now, if you noticed, it mentioned reality a few times there in the definition. And so truth is very closely connected to reality. It can't be separated from reality. So we should also get a definition of reality, right? So reality is the quality or state of being real. That doesn't really help much, right? When you use the word in the definition, that's a little bit of a cheat in my book, but that's the way Merriam-Webster defined reality. But I like the way Dallas Willard defines reality. He says reality is what you run into when you're wrong. And so if I decided I was going to jump on my motorcycle and drive to Fergus Falls, and I didn't think to look at my gas tank, at my gas gauge, and I get out onto the freeway and I look down and my gas gauge says that it's on empty, I could try to believe that I'll make it to Fergus Falls. But if what I'm thinking does not correspond to reality, I'm going to run into reality partway to Fergus Falls. That's what it means to run into reality. So, truth can be defined as a correct representation of reality, and it's a statement about reality. Okay? Now, so, if you think about it, since the spiritual realm is also true, that is also reality. And so there's a lot of things that we can say about spiritual realm, and if it corresponds to reality, it's a true statement. And if it doesn't correspond, it's not a true statement. So I'm kind of interested here that came. Okay, there we go. And see if you guys, it's pretty tiny print. I apologize about that. But I'm already way ahead of myself, so this is great. This is going good, okay? All right, so here's something that we need to recognize, and I think it'll be important going forward. Truth is related to reality, and it's dependent on reality. Reality is not dependent on truth. What does that mean? That means that there are things that are real that nobody here can tell us about. Because if truth is a statement about reality, you would have to know everything to always be able to have truth dependent on reality. Reality dependent on truth. So in other words, there is reality for which we have no understanding. Nobody can tell you about it. Do you believe that? Okay. So one of those things, for example, the Bible tells us that we can't even imagine what God has in store for his people. That's a reality for which we don't have the truth. We can't even really imagine what it is. So the truth is dependent on reality, but reality exists whether you arrive at the truth or not. It's not dependent on, reality is not dependent on the truth. Okay. Oh boy, that's where all the other stuff is. It's printed on both sides. I like your printer. Saves paper, yeah. So here's one of the things that I want to also bring home is that in order to function in our world, we really have to operate as if truth matters. Now, there are a lot of people, and we'll talk about this in a minute, there are a lot of people that would like you to be convinced that truth doesn't really matter, or that we can't really know the truth. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But here's the bottom line. You can't operate as if truth doesn't matter. So, for example, Jerry just sat in a chair. And he operated as if that chair was going to hold him, that there was a reality about that chair, that it really was there. He didn't even give it a second thought. We operate in so many ways assuming that there is a reality that we can count on. Some of you might, unlike me, balance your checkbook. And if you operate as if mathematics is a reality, you'll know whether you have money left to spend or not. And we operate in a world that requires us to act as if truth matters. Okay, so that's an important aspect. So, if the truth is a correct representation of reality, then it is impossible to live as if there's no truth, because it's impossible to live as if there's no reality. You see the connection there? Okay, now, there's one thing that when we start talking about truth, there's this concept of objective truth. Because the world and our culture loves to use a phrase or use the word truth, but they don't mean a correct representation of reality when they use that word. So let me give you an example of this. Let's run this video real quick. So this person, I'll set it up. This person is the CEO of National Public Radio. Previously, she'd been the CEO at Wikipedia. And she's talking here on a TED Talk about Wikipedia. Now, let's hear what she has to say about truth. Oh, yeah, look at that. Somehow I managed to, just click on that.
It actually works really well. Because in our normal
238,
lives,
if you want to go back just a sec. That's good enough. Just click there, right there.
As it turns out, not only does Wikipedia's model work there, it actually works really well. Because in our normal lives, these contentious conversations tend to erupt over disagreement about what the truth actually is. But the people who write these articles, they're not focused on the truth. They're focused on something else, which is the best of what we can know right now. And after 7 years of working with these brilliant folks, I've come to believe that they are onto something. That perhaps for our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth and seeking to convince others of the truth might not be the right place to start. In fact, our reverence for the truth might be a distraction that's getting in the way of finding common ground and getting things done. Now, that is not to say that the truth doesn't exist, nor is it to say that the truth isn't important. Clearly, the search for the truth has led us to do great things, to learn great things. But I think if I were to really ask you to think about this, one of the things that we could all acknowledge is that part of the reason we have such glorious chronicles to the human experience in all forms of culture is because we acknowledge there are many different truths. And so in the spirit of that, I'm certain that the truth exists for you, and probably for the person sitting next to you. But this may not be the same truth. This is because the truth of the matter is very often, for many people, what happens when we merge facts about the world with our beliefs about the world. So we all have different truths. They're based on things like where we come from, how we were raised, and how other people perceive us.
Okay, we can
Now,
stop there.
You
So did you pick up a few of the phrases? I'll repeat a few of the things in case you missed it that she said there. So she's talking about Wikipedia and how it works because people aren't trying to seek the truth. Did you pick that? That was you didn't hear that she was talking about Wikipedia, but she was saying their model works because they aren't trying to seek the truth. She says they're not focused on the truth. What are they focused on? She says they're focused on the best of what we can know right now. Well, how's that the best in what way if it's not true? So that kind of begs a question right there. So then she says, perhaps for our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth might not be the right place to start. In fact, our reverence for the truth might be a distraction that's getting in the way of finding common ground and getting things done. Gee, we want to get things done, not figure out what the truth is. Okay, she says another thing. So we acknowledge there are many different truths. Okay, well, in one sense, there can be a truth about this reality and a truth about this reality and a truth about this reality. But when it comes to a reality, there are not many different truths. That which corresponds to the reality is true and nothing else. But she says we acknowledge there are many truths. Truth exists for you and probably for the person sitting next to you, but this may not be the same truth. What truth are we talking about here? That's what I'd like to know. What truth are we talking about? So the truth of the matter, she says, is very often, for many people, what happens when we merge facts about the world with our beliefs about the world. Now, I don't know about you, but I would like to believe what is true about the world. There should not be a separation between the facts about the world and what we believe about the world. If there is, we should try to find that out and square our belief with reality. We're not in a good place if what we believe does not correspond to reality. That's how you get stuck on the freeway going to Fergus Falls. She says we merge our facts about the world with our beliefs about the world, so we have different truths. They're based on things like where we come from, how we were raised, and how others perceive us. So we live in a society right now that promotes the idea that there is no objective truth. So what's the difference between objective and subjective? What she just described is a concept of subjectivity, saying truth is subjective. That means truth is, for me, what I want it to be, and there's nobody outside of me that can tell me differently. That's the concept of subjectivity. Objectivity is, hey, this can be evaluated, and no matter what anybody's opinion is, it can be determined to be true. That's truth. Did anybody see the live little broadcast we did on Facebook the other day, where I came in with a light blue shirt? I asked my wife before I left, what color is my shirt? She said, it's gray. I said, well, is there some kind of other aspect of gray? And she's like, it's just gray. I believe her. It looks a little light blue to me. Had blue undertones, I think it was Amanda said, and blue undertones. Now, I'll admit, color is a little bit of a tricky thing to determine the truth, but color is really about how light interacts with the object that you're looking at. And there are instruments that you can use to measure the color of it. Now, some people have a different perception, and maybe that was Pete's problem, that he thought my shirt was red, but some people see colors differently. But there is an objective way to evaluate the color. You take it into a paint store, for example, they'll tell you what color it is because they can evaluate the light waves that are coming off of it versus the light waves that are being absorbed by that. And so based on what area of the rainbow, if you will, of colors that are reflecting off of it, they can tell you the color of that item. So we can say unequivocally under certain things what reality actually is, and we should try to align our belief system with that reality. So when people ask the question about truth, is there objective truth? One of the problems that they're trying to solve is the idea of absolute truth. What is absolute truth? Absolute truth has to do with the morality of something. It has to do with, so you have objective truth. Then there's this idea of moral absolutes. Moral absolutes, some people, most people in our educational system and the higher educational system will insist that there is no way of knowing any moral absolutes. There are no moral absolutes. So when you go from the idea of saying what color is something, how much gasoline is it going to take to travel a certain distance with this vehicle, those are things that can be evaluated based on material aspects. The issue that we turn into here is the concept of morality. And so let's ask the question, is there moral reality? If truth is the correct representation of reality, can we say that there is real moral truth? That there is a reality? Can anyone insist that their understanding of right and wrong is the correct understanding? And this is where our culture, and unfortunately, many in the church, in the Christian church, in the Western Christian church in particular, has given way to the philosopher. The issue is that modern philosophy has literally lost its connection with reality to the point of denying it ever existed. And this, frankly, has suited our society quite well. Now, you've maybe heard the statement, I think I read it on a album cover of Larry Norman's album cover. He said, if you aren't a liberal when you're young, you have no heart. And if you aren't a conservative when you're old, you have no brain. I don't know if you've ever heard that statement before, but it really made me think because, when I was in junior high, unfortunately I was in junior high, and using drugs, I really thought we should legalize those things. I didn't really want to get in trouble for it. We went through in our society this idea of so-called free sex and things like that, where there's supposedly no moral absolute regarding sexual activity. And that's because our society has wanted there to be no such thing as a moral truth, that our higher educational system has been able to thrive in propagating that philosophy. It suits us very well. It excuses our behavior and our desires. Now, I want to pause for just a second here. I'm going to be pulling, I'm giving you a lot of little dots here, okay? Have you ever done a dot-to-dot drawing? Those are the only kind I can do successfully. And then we're going to start drawing those lines between the dots and connecting those, okay? So we had truth. What is truth? It's the correct representation of reality, okay? And then, well, what is reality? Well, that which actually exists. And then we had objective truth versus subjectivity, which I refuse to call it subjective truth because that doesn't exist. Objective versus subjective. Subjective is somebody's opinion. Objective is the evaluation of reality and determining whether the statement matches it or not. And then we have the idea of moral absolutes, which we refer to at times as moral or as absolute truth. Now I want to talk about one other thing that has come from this idea in our culture that there is no moral truth. So another, and it's a fairly recent influence that has significantly shaped our culture, is something that is referred to as tolerance. I say it parades on the float of tolerance. It's pulled down the street in these parades of tolerance. It's a close cousin to the modern philosophy that there is no truth and no way to know the truth. But it's an assertion made by those that espouse and they use the word tolerance. If you think you believe that what you believe about morality is true, as opposed to it merely being your own opinion, then you are considered to be intolerant. Now, if you're intolerant, then what does that make you? It makes you a bigot. That's what people will call you. It's getting a little more heated these days, and you're becoming fascist and Nazis if you believe that what you believe is true. But you're intolerant, you're a bigot. So what do bigots look like in this theory of tolerance? Close-minded, dogmatic, arrogant. I don't remember who it was that wrote the book. I think it was Rush Limbaugh, but correct me if I'm wrong, that said, we can't help it that we're right. That does sound a little arrogant, and so we've maybe earned a little bit of that. If you are a bigot, you will have contempt for those who disagree with you and will even treat them badly. This is the teaching of intolerance. This is why those who espouse tolerance say, we can't have intolerance because you will treat people poorly. Okay? If they disagree with you, you'll treat them bad. And you'll even think that they deserve the bad treatment. Your mistreatment may even come to the point of robbing them from their rights, from their goods, from their dignity, and even their lives. Today, one of the lies that is being told by those who are in favor of transitioning children's sexes will say, would you rather have a live use of the opposite sex? You know, like for my daughter, for example, would you rather have a live son or a dead daughter? By the way, the statistics don't bear that out, but nonetheless, here's the thing. What is being said is if you are intolerant, it will lead to robbing people of their rights, robbing people of their dignity, robbing people even of their lives. And you know, you don't really have to look very hard in history to see how someone could form this opinion. Surely there have been people who believe they are justified in mistreating, oppressing, and even eliminating those who disagree with their views. We have seen that in history, haven't we? So why wouldn't we want to encourage a perspective that allows all people to hold differing views without fear or persecution? I mean, at first, you may be thinking, where's this guy heading? Because I was first on the track of saying, yeah, here's this view of tolerance. But then I've asked a question that I think we really have to think about. Don't get too concerned because I'm going to explain the problems with this view of tolerance. But we should think about and understand, so when we're talking with people that have this view, understand that it seems perfectly reasonable to say that a perspective that allows all people to hold differing fears without view of persecution is a reasonable thing to want. I want that. I want to be able to disagree with people without fearing for my life. That's not an unreasonable thing. And of course, we should encourage the respect of all people in spite of their views, shouldn't we? As believers, as Christians, we should encourage the respect of all people, even those who disagree with us. But this is not the proposal of the doctrine of tolerance. It sounds close, but the proposal is the idea that has arisen under the guise of tolerance is not that all people should be respected without regard to their views, but that any view that asserts it is correct, that asserts it can be objectively evaluated and found to be true, that view must not be tolerated. That's different, isn't it, than having respect for people that disagree with you. The idea of the evangelists of tolerance is that if you have a perspective on moral absolutes, if you believe in moral absolutes, then you are not to be tolerated. In fact, you must be rejected out of hand. The complete removal of objectivity in regards to right and wrong is what has been proposed, what's been put forward in our culture, and to a large part accepted, and even in the church, unfortunately. But there's two significant problems with this view that I want to point out. The first one is it's self-defeating. So what does that mean? That means if you hold this view as truth and absolute, you automatically have to reject it out of hand because you are the one saying your view is true. Okay? It insists the only standard for right and wrong is whether or not a particular view insists that it's right. Those who espouse the view of tolerance insist that they're right. And by their own definition, should be rejected. So that's why it's self-defeating. Tolerance itself would need to be disqualified by their own definition. But there's another problem. It removes any framework for civil debate. And that's what we're seeing in our society today. That's what we're seeing. There's no basis for evaluating whether or not a proposed moral system should be accepted or rejected. Now, I remember, oh boy, now I just lost his name. That he was running for president, a black man that I just love, Ben Carson, thank you. I remember seeing him being interviewed, and the interviewer asked, "Why should we allow you to legislate morality? That's what you're proposing." And he said, "Tell me one law that is not a legislation of morality." Murder, theft, not paying your taxes, hate crimes. Every single law is a legislation of morality. It used to be that people who are running for president, for example, could stand up on the stage and say, "Well, here's what my proposed policies are," and the other person would say, "Well, those are ridiculous, they'll never work. Here's the reasons those won't work, and this is why this is a much better policy." And we used to be able to talk about the effectiveness, the benefits, the value system behind these policies. And we would agree, here's the American values, and this policy subscribes to those values. And yours are against those values, whatever. In today's environment, what has happened is by saying that no espousing of values can be correct, you no longer have a basis for civil debate and to say, well, which policy leads to the best outcome? It's been removed by this concept that's masquerading as tolerant. For a view to have merit, it must be subject to objective evaluation. Once you've removed the ability to objectively evaluate it, you have removed the ability to say one view has merit or does not have merit. Does that make sense? Are you following? By the way, I should have started out. We're in school, right? This is Family Bible School. Okay? So I hope you came with your thinking hats. So where does this lead? It leads to where we are. Incivility, frustration, and in the end, an elitism where power is the only option. The ones in power get to reign and rule. And that's the only option, and that's what people are seeking. If you're in power, your opinion matters. If you're not in power, your opinion doesn't. And that's where we are today. The loudest voices crying for justice and tolerance are now acting with the greatest incivility we've seen in decades because they've lost power. Okay, the Bible asserts, on the other hand, that there is a moral reality that can be known to be true. A moral reality that can be known to be true. This spiritual reality is as real and reliable as the material world or mathematical truths. Okay? So this is the alternative view that the Bible puts forward. It's alternative only now because our society has left that view. For 2,000 years, that was the primary view of society. Most people today will insist that there's a physical reality, unless if you have 1 or 2 PhDs in philosophy, you might not agree with that statement, but most people agree with it, and they'll concede to mathematical truths. And these are said to be based on reality. And as a thinking Christian, I propose to you that there is a spiritual reality that is just as real as the material world and just as true as algebra and fractions. And it can be counted on just as surely as that chair that Jerry sat on. In fact, you depend on it in every relationship. You maintain and experience it in most of your thoughts. You experience spiritual reality in your relationships. Imagine trying to act in a society where there was nothing more than the material value, and I don't know these days what that comes to, but at one point they had calculated the value, the material value of a person's body. You know, you can sell some of the parts and whatnot, and it comes up to a certain sum. Imagine being in a society where that is how you related to everybody around you, that they were just material blob in a material world, whose only value is their body. It's not a way to carry on relationships. We don't act that way towards our children. We certainly don't act that way towards our grandchildren. Man, our grandchildren are worth more than any kid prior to that generation, even our own. I don't know how my wonderful children made such great grandchildren. Anyway, so let me get back to where I was. Sorry, I lost track on that. Okay, so you instinctively insist that some things are wrong, especially if they're carried out against you or against those you love. I had an interesting experience one time before I was married. I was living at the res house. I was asleep. I woke up, and I felt like God was telling me that I should be praying for a child that was about to be aborted, or the mother was considering abortion. No idea who. Strange thing. I've never had something like that happen to me before. And I was trying to pray, but I'm like, God, I don't know this person. I don't know the mother or the father or obviously the child hadn't been born. I don't know the child yet. I don't know the circumstances. I don't know the situation. It's very difficult for me to have any sense of urgency in praying for a child who I have no connection to. I mean, is that understandable? It's hard to pray for somebody you have no connection to. But what makes the connection so important? It's the spiritual reality that relationship involves spiritual reality. And without spiritual reality, relationship is non-existent. It would not exist. We would interacting purely on a physical basis. So you instinctively insist that some things are wrong, especially if carried out against you and those you love. And it's in fact your relationship with those you love that is based on your knowledge that they have intrinsic value. You know intuitively they have intrinsic value. Now, this is a truth upon which you operate in most of your interactions, except maybe when they irritate you. But if we insist that any behavior is intrinsically wrong, we must concede that there must be an objective means of determining what is wrong and what is right. We're insisting there's a standard that must exist outside of our own opinion. And I'm here to tell you that God, primarily through Jesus Christ, communicated that standard. And if we understand it rightly, that standard will result in all the objectives of true tolerance, while still providing a framework for civil conversation about the adoption and implementation of policies that will lead to righteousness, peace, and joy. Okay. I want to talk a minute about truth and faith. Again, dots. We're going to connect a few of these dots in a little bit. Truth and faith. So many of us believe faith and works are opposed to one another. I would ask for a show of hands, but don't do that. I won't do that. And Romans 3:27 says, "Where then is boasting? It's excluded. By what kind of law? Of works? No, but by a law of faith." Faith doesn't, and so we kind of get this idea of faith and works as being opposed to one another. But I want to talk a little bit about how that is. And so let's start with what is faith? And let's start about how is it related to truth? Because I'll tell you just right up front, in the spirit of telling you what I'm going to tell you, is that faith does not exclude works. It excludes boasting. That's what Romans was saying, what Paul said in Romans. Where then is the boasting? It is excluded. What excludes it? The law of works? No, the law of faith excludes it. Boasting, it doesn't exclude works. Faith is not opposed to works. It's opposed to earning, to merit, okay? But let's look at what faith and truth, how it's, okay? Biblical faith, right, is not just a strong belief, okay? It's the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Most people think of it as a strong belief in God or in doctrines or a religion without any proof is often added on there. It's a strong belief without any proof. But I don't think that's an accurate understanding of faith. The Bible tells us that it's assurance of what? It's substantive. The confirmation, that word actually in the Greek is used for a title or a deed. It's that kind of assurance of things that you've hoped for. It's actually having something solid to count on. And it's conviction or evidence and proof of things that we can't see. The writer here is making a truth claim about faith, that faith is proof of hope and testimonial evidence of things that are unseen. Okay? So what is faith if it's not a strong belief in God? Many people, if you ask them what is faith, they go, well, quote the verse we just said. Is that a definition of faith? No, I think that's an explanation of faith or a description of faith. It's like saying, what is a banana? Well, a banana is yellow. Faith is the assurance of, okay? No, that's not a definition. That's a description. So what is faith? The dictionary, if we turn there, so say here, I'll go back. The dictionary says it's complete trust or confidence or someone or something. Complete trust or confidence in someone or something. I think that's a pretty good definition. So I want to demonstrate faith for you. And I need a volunteer. And before you volunteer, I want to explain something. You guys familiar with the law of the pendulum? Okay, now it's actually several laws. Some people refer to it as the law of the pendulum, but it's actually several laws that all fall under the category of the conservation of mechanical energy. And the way the pendulum works, you all knew this, right? I learned it in 6th grade. If you start a pendulum at point A, it's the force of gravity that causes it to go, and inertia that keeps it going up to a certain point, right? And it goes to point B. When it reaches point B, the draw of gravitational pull overcomes the inertia and it stops. And then it comes back. But it never returns to point A, right? Do you guys believe that? Yeah, all believe? Okay. I'd like a volunteer. We're going to test this theory out. You want Amanda? You want to volunteer? Okay. I'd like you to sit right here. We'll get you lined up. We happen to have a pendulum right here. Okay? Now, it's very important that you stay very still.
I'm not good at that.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. I'll be behind you.
Okay.
So your option, don't move this way. If you can't stay still, you go this way.
Okay.
Okay? You ready? Now, I'm going to prove to you that the pendulum will never come back this far, okay?
Oh my.
Now, if you're nervous, you just jump out there, okay? Because remember, it goes over to point B, and it's going to actually, let's get you slid over just a tiny bit here. We got to line you right up, right there. Okay. It's going to hover there for a second. And when you see it hover, if you get nervous, you just bail, okay? Just go that way. Now, wait a minute. You believe that what I told you about the pendulum?
Well, I didn't think you'd lie to me.
You have too much confidence in my character, maybe. So when it leaves point A, because of this is physics here, it's not going to come all the way back. So, okay? Okay, now remember, if you get nervous, you just go that way, okay? Don't go that way. Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Hey, you did not move. Woo! Okay. Okay, man, you are the first person that I have demonstrated this with that actually sat there. Now, I know I've got a lot of takers that want to try it now and see how much they can sit in there. But here's the thing. What Amanda just demonstrated was not a strong opinion, but an action based on what she believed to be true. She put something at risk, her face, based on what she believed to be true. Okay? And so the faith really, I'll move forward here. Faith really is an action word. And what it means is aligning your will to act. Now, faith doesn't always take, you might always not have the opportunity to perform the action. So it starts with aligning your will to act appropriately based on the truth. So it involves not only being convinced that something is true, but willing to risk that it's true. To stand in there even when the pendulum's headed back at you, knowing that it's not actually going to hit you allows you to sit in the seat. Now, Amanda, did you hold on to the bottom of the seat? I don't know. Are you still shaking? Now, it doesn't mean you're not afraid. Now, I've done this. The first time I did this, I sat in the seat and I held on. And then as it got close, I went like that, okay? But why do we hold on? Some people close their eyes. Why do you close their eyes? Because that is employing means to overcome the reaction of your body so that you are settled in staying in that chair. That is setting your will to act according to what you actually believe. Sometimes your body wants to overrule your will and says, those of you who are old enough to remember Lost in Space, danger, Will Robinson. Your body is saying, danger, Will Robinson, and you want to bail. But by holding yourself, closing your eyes, doing whatever is necessary to stay in that chair, that is an act of faith in the law of the pendulum. That is faith. That's what faith is intended to be. So faith is an action. And the way I like to say it, it's acting in a way that's appropriate given the truthfulness of something. It's not only believing, it's being convinced. It's not only being convinced, it's aligning your will to act appropriately. And so we have to ask the question at times, what is appropriate in this situation? Now, sometimes our body says that it's appropriate to bail. But it was appropriate to sit there because you know it's not going to return there. That's an appropriate action to sit in the chair. Many times we find ourselves faced with the question of appropriateness. What does faith require of us? Sometimes we find ourselves struggling with what is true and what isn't true and trying to understand that. But when those two questions are settled, so they're not always settled, right? Sometimes those are difficult things, and that's part of what elders, teachers, prophets, pastors are for, is to help us come to grips with those two questions. What is true and what's appropriate action? But what you need to settle in your heart, in your mind, to have faith is that you will choose to act appropriately to what has been revealed as truth. That's what faith is. We sing that song, I have decided to follow Jesus. That's that decision. No turning back, no bailing out of the chair. Okay, so one other thing I want to say about this. When one acts appropriately, faith leads to peace. Being in harmony with the truth is what peace is. Being in harmony with the truth. When you are on the wrong side of reality, you cannot and will not have peace. Your life will be characterized, as mine was for several years, by strife, friction, discord, anxiety, and depression. Those are signs of being on the wrong side of reality. Another way to say it is, when you're not at peace, it's because you're acting on or believing in something that is in opposition to the truth. And oftentimes what we find is people really are messed up, if you will, in their inner being because they know what the truth is, but they've decided not to act according to that. And it leads to all forms of difficulties for us, not the least of which is stress, but often anxiety and depression. All right, One last dot here that, oh, there's two more. Sorry, got your hopes up. I want to read from John 4:21. Now, this is Jesus speaking to the woman at the well. And he said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father." I want to pause there, just give you a little background. Remember, Jesus was speaking to this woman at the well. He asked her to give him a drink and asked her to give him a drink. And in the conversation, she comes to the conclusion that he must be some kind of a prophet or a holy man or something. And she says, "Sir, I perceive from you that you are a prophet." That's a rough, loose, I'm not got it right in front of me, but that's basically, she's like, hey. And so I've got this burning question. Now, if you had somebody that you thought has this all figured out, is the first question you'd ask, where should I go to church? Seems like a strange question, but it was a burning question in their society. And so Jesus said, it really doesn't, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem, those were the two options she was looking at, is where you'll worship the Father. And then he tells her, you worship what you do not know. We worship, the Jews, know what we know. For salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. So what does it mean to worship in spirit? Now, we're kind of a charismatic group here, and sometimes we use that phrase to mean things that go on during the worship service. And I'm not saying that that's not worshiping in the Spirit, but I don't think that's entirely what Jesus had in mind. Some people that are not of a charismatic persuasion will list some things. Well, this true worship is, giving money or engaging in prayer, or maybe going to church or something like that. But even engaging in prayer, if the heart is not fully aligned with God, it isn't true worship, right? And we would know that. And God said that basically in Isaiah, for example. I get a kick out of this verse. This is Isaiah 1:12-15. He says, "Who requires you to trample the temple courts? Don't bring your worthless offerings any longer. I hate your meetings. I can't endure your solemn assemblies." Now, if I had been in that day, I probably would have said, well, I thought you required that of us. Malachi, you're probably familiar with this in chapter 1, verse 10. He says, "I wish someone would just shut the door to the temple. I will not accept an offering from you." These people thought that they were worshiping, but they weren't worshiping in spirit and in truth. And this is why God said, hey, I don't want this kind of worship. I think I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but there's one thing I do want to say about prayer. There's a couple of places that God tells us that he doesn't answer our prayer if we don't honor our spouse. And that's an interesting thing to say, but there's a connection between how we treat the people that represent the closest relationship that God has given to man. and how our heart is towards God. There is an undeniable connection between those kinds of relationships and our relationship with God, and you can't separate those connections. So what does it mean to worship in spirit? I think that it means giving yourself to God entirely, withholding nothing from Him. It involves presenting your body as a living sacrifice, for example, holy and acceptable to God, which is what? Your spiritual service of worship. That's worshiping in spirit. Presenting your body, a living and holy sacrifice acceptable to God. This is spiritual worship, worshiping in the Spirit. It's aligning your will to act appropriately based on the truth. It's sincerity. But not only sincerity, not only, well, I mean it this time, but acting on what you know God wants from you. You remember the story of the rich young ruler? He came asking Jesus how he could have eternal life, and Jesus asked him, what does the law say? And asked him a few leading questions, and then he said, well, you're missing one thing. Give away everything you have to the poor and come and follow me. And he went away sad. Now, do you think God revealed any further truth to him when he had already rejected the answer to the question he was asking? It's really wanting to have the answer so that you can align your will to the answer that is a matter of worshiping God in spirit. What does it mean to worship in truth? It doesn't necessarily mean truly worshiping as opposed to faking it, although that is also not worshiping in truth. It's not enough to be simply sincere. I think what Jesus is saying here is that it's a matter of coming to the truth so that the depth of your worship can be in alignment with the truth. So it's not ignorant worship. It's worship in accordance to the truth. So there's true and there's sincere worship. That's worshiping with your spirit, with your whole being. But there's also worshiping according to the truth. So Jesus when he spoke to the woman, remember he said, you worship what you don't know, we worship what we know, indicating that worship must be based on accurate knowledge and not ignorance. Jesus spoke against the ignorance of the Samaritans' worship, and that's because they were not simply ignorant, but they refused to worship according to the truth that they had received. The Samaritans have a history with God and with the Israelites, and they knew the teachings of Moses and yet had rejected them. And that's why Jesus spoke against the ignorance at that place. But he also pointed out that there's an opportunity for her to worship in spirit and truth and be accepted by God the Father, who is looking for those kinds of worshipers. And it didn't matter which mountain she worshiped on. But she had to align herself with the truth that God had revealed to her. And Jesus was revealing a lot to her right at that point. Another place, Matthew 15, Jesus spoke against the Jewish worshiper whose heart was not in it by quoting Isaiah, saying, "You hypocrites, rightly did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain do they worship me.'" So many will say it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you're sincere, but that's not what the teaching of the Bible is. The Bible says it does matter what you believe. Being sincere in opposition to the truth is not something God is pleased with. Romans chapter 1, verse 18, this is a very interesting passage to me. It says that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who, can anybody finish that sentence right there? The ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who? Do you know? Ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth. Who suppress the truth. Because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. God is angry with people because they will not believe the truth about God that they can and do already know. Paul later goes on to say, even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks. And they became futile in their thinking, in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened, and therefore God gave them over. Paul explains in his letter to the believers in Thessalonica that there will be a day when God will no longer restrain the forces of evil, and then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. And he says that's the one who is coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, and he goes on talking about this, but he says, because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. And for this reason, God sends upon them a deluding influence. I want you to realize that everybody, we are people who can't avoid believing in something. We believe. And the question is whether or not what we believe in is true. If we want to please God, if we want to be true worshipers of God, we must be a lover of the truth. It's not enough to have faith alone. The faith you have must be built on the bedrock of truth. I think I want to leave it right there. I have a couple more points to make, but I think I'll leave that because I want to open it up for discussion. In the interest or in the spirit of being at school, generally there should be opportunity to ask questions. And I want to leave it here for us to be able to, for me to be able to clarify anything anybody has and any questions anybody has to ask. And I'll give you a little incentive to ask a few questions. If you don't, I'll start teaching again. Wow. Either I really covered it, or it's just a lot to take in. Daniel.
So
Thank you.
the idea of, in our society, of child raising and discipline of children, of if a spanking, well, just the word of, or the verse that comes to mind, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. So what our society, or the thinking is, if you spank a child, you're going to ruin the child. So it's two ideas that are saying the outcome is drastically different. So to me, that was, so is that a moral evidence or moral conclusion to those two types or opposing ideas?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question to ask in the light of truth. So let me break it down into a few things. Number one, is that a moral imperative? The moral imperative is that we are responsible for training our children to survive in a world that operates according to reality, both physical and spiritual reality. We're responsible for bringing our children to an understanding of how that reality actually works. Okay? And one of the truths about reality is there are consequences. So you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. Those are not necessarily moral consequences, they're just a reality that we can teach our children about. If you don't pay attention and you're playing in the street, you might get injured by motorists. There's things that we are responsible to teach our children about. But then it comes down to, as well, when you start talking about spiritual realities, obviously we want our children to come to the Lord, right? And so we need to teach them about the Lord. But whether or not they choose to follow Christ, they're going to have to live in a world amongst other people with relationships. And there are truths which are found in the Bible. There are truths which are found in the Bible about what makes relationships work. What makes them work well and what doesn't make them work well. And we can teach our children about these things as they're growing up. Now, when we start talking about spanking and things like that, obviously there's a pretty broad spectrum in what people think about that. Is there a biblical truth about that? I think the biblical truth is, number one, in Hebrews, it says that a father that doesn't discipline his child hates him. And I think the spare the rod and spoil the child is a euphemism for, it's more of a metaphorical saying. It doesn't mean that you have to use a physical rod. There's effective ways to discipline children. But we also need to factor in there's appropriateness of age that has to do with, so when children are very young, one of the best things you can do is train them. But as they start getting older, there becomes a point where you need to teach them. And there's a difference between training and teaching. And you need to understand when they're capable of understanding and teaching them. But you also need to give them a vision for who God is and how this world operates and things like that. And that doesn't have to do with discipline. And that's something that, unfortunately, parents often leave out in our education. We're trying to teach our children a lot of things, and sometimes we kind of lose sight of teaching them who God is, and not what his character is like. And one of the best ways to do that is representing the character of God before our children. And that doesn't mean always, we're going to fail in how we treat our children, but it means representing God in your relationship to him. So, in fact, let me use Job as an example here. Now, what we see in Job's life that's recorded was after his children were raised, as far as we can tell. We don't have a lot of information on that, but it appears to be that way. But let me ask you this question. How good was Job's theology? Did Job have good theology? Give him a grade, A to F. Mike, grade him. D. Yeah. That's pretty good. So, Job did not understand God's omniscience, omnipotence. I mean, what did he think? Well, God must not know what's going on. He can't see if I could just get to where he is and explain the situation, he'd come to see things differently, right? Okay. But here's an interesting statement. I could read a lot of things that Job's buddies said to him, and you would probably say amen. They had better theology in a lot of cases, some poor doctrine, but some decent theology about God. But what did God say? He said, only Job spoke right of me. Why did he say that if Job thought God didn't know what was going on? It's because he had confidence in the character of God. And that's what God cares about. That's what God cares, what we think about his character, who he is as a person. And why he said, to the Pharisees, you tithe, mint, dill, and cumin, and neglect the weightier provision of the law, which is what? Faithfulness, justice, and mercy. That's the character of God. That's what God's trying to communicate. And we can show our confidence in God's character before our children, and they will catch that confidence in the character of God. So that's one of the areas, I think, in terms of reality and truth, is this is who God is, and I can demonstrate that. Not only do I believe that, but then watch him act in our lives in a way that is consistent with that. That's why we shared, when we had financial struggles, we shared that with our children. But we also shared our faith in God and said, hey, you don't have to worry about this. So whether or not you spank, I think there's opportunities in both camps for improvement on that. Good question. Okay, we're done. That was the last question. Thank you. Come on in.
Let's just all say thank you to Tory real quick. Thank you. Informative, inspiring, challenging. That was good, really good. Thank you. And thanks to Mandy for sitting in the chair. Wow, that was brave. Thank you, Mandy. Enjoy one another's company. Come back again tomorrow, same time, same place. Not the same food, though. We're going to have something different tomorrow. Thanks for coming today. We'll see you again real soon.
You're good. The only announcement that I really have for you, first of all, thank you. Your kids were amazing, and they did so great, and they were so fun. Like Tom said, same time, same place tomorrow. One of the groups, I believe, their craft was still drying when they moved on. So if you were in the third and fourth group, fifth and sixth grade group, go out to the craft room and grab your craft before you leave, and it should be pretty dry. Okay, or if you didn't grab your craft at all, go get your craft. Okay, thank you guys. Have a wonderful night.